just figured out why it's so hot outside. I'm looking out my window. Devil out there barbecuing cars. Jesus just letting them do it.
What up, YouTube?
Read a lot of commentary recently on the Confederate flag in South Carolina. Now, it makes perfect sense that people are calling for it to be taken down. It shouldn't be flying on a federal building in any case. What I don't necessarily agree with is the idea that taking the flag down means significant change. It doesn't make sense to remove it if there's not going to be any real change attached to it. The same mindsets that have kept the flag in place all these years, will those mindsets change just because the flag's not there? It would be purely cosmetic. Yes, there's meaning behind it. But when you look back through history, there have been political statements made that have been essentially cosmetic. Taking down the whites only signs does not mean freedom, because the mindsets take longer to change than to simply pull down a sign. And if the mindsets have not changed, then the sign was just cosmetic. Similar to the flag. If the flag is brought down, it seems like those who were in favor of the flag being up in the first place would actually become more entrenched. It seems like they would dig in more. Let's keep in mind what this flag represented, what it stood for. The rebel states. They're not going to change their mind just because that's what the majority of people wanted them to do. Why should it be any different now? Yes, we've progressed as a nation. Stop thinking like that. That has nothing to do with me. Well, right now maybe. It does not matter if you take the flag down, if the mindset's connected to it don't go anywhere. If there's still hate, if there's still bigotry and prejudice, then the flag is just gonna occupy a closet somewhere. What's interesting is at the founding of this nation, Black people had the same status as they did in the South. So it does not make sense that the Confederate flag represents poor treatment of Black people and prejudice and bias, but the American flag represents freedom and the Union. When in reality, the American flag is at the same time. And if the condition, the overall condition of Blacks was not positive, if Blacks weren't allowed to vote throughout the Union, then why do we think that the American flag was so much of a better symbol, was so much more positive than the Confederate? Yes, the Confederate strictly stood for the South. And in the South, there were many states that were using slavery. But not every state that had slaves was part of the group that seceded. There were northern states that had slaves, but they were part of the Union. They were part of the winning side. They were part of the American flag. That was their symbol. And even now, when we look at the flag, it still represents this country. But look at what has happened in this country. And people get so upset at the treatment of a flag, and it is a symbol. I'll never go off on somebody who burns a flag, steps on flags, and otherwise demonstrates their disgust or anger or frustration with this country and policies. And they use the freedom that people claim the flag represents to demonstrate it. And it's always interesting to me when I read opinions from Marines and other military personnel who end up making threats. If I ever come across you, then we'll see who. You sound, you sound ignorant. You're talking about somebody else's freedom. I fought for your freedom. Thank you. May I please use my freedom as I see fit? I'm not saying that I would burn flags or stomp on flags. I'm not going to have a problem with somebody else doing what they want to do because that's their expression of their freedom. And I would never say, well, if you don't like it, you can get out of the country, go. But that's what freedom is. I'm here, and this is supposed to be about a free country. And if I want to step on the flag that means freedom, I'm free to do so. Well, every action has a consequence. That's true. But if I want to step on a flag, that should not mean you get to beat my ass. That should not mean you get to threaten me, threaten my life. It's a symbol. And when you don't agree with the symbol, I was asking someone the other day, why is it that certain hate groups still get to operate? Why is it that the KKK has an organization or white supremacists have an organization when they're specifically about hating and are connected to acts of such horror historically? I mean, the United States did not go and allow, there's some controversy there. The Nazis, okay, after the war, condemned if you had anything to do with the Nazis, officially condemned, when in reality, our country was taking the scientists and hiding them out so that they could continue their research for us. That being said, it was publicly denounced to be a part of something that was so criminal. But yet, the Klan has murdered how many people from the time of its inception? White supremacist groups have threatened, killed how many people? Aryan Nation, how many people? And of course, someone's going to make the argument, well, what about gangs? What about black gangs? What about the Crips and the Bloods? I'm not a fan of those either. Why are you so quick to talk about the police? Why are you so quick to talk about a white person killing a black person? Well, it's not the act of violence itself. Violence will always happen. In my estimation, there will always be violence, but there won't necessarily always be justice. When a black person kills another black person, if they're caught, they go to jail. When a white person kills a black person, it really depends on a number of factors, but more often than not, there is a chance that they are not convicted, or that the punishment is less than what it would have been had it been a black on white crime or a black on black crime. Violence, aggression is a human trait, period. And it's not attached to color. One thing I don't understand is how the atrocities that occurred in Germany towards the Jews, I don't understand how a group of people can perpetuate such crimes against humans and feel like they were justified. But beyond that, I don't understand how another group of people, the rest of the world even, specifically the United States, can look overseas at what's happening and condemn the German regime for what they did during the Holocaust and not be able to look back at self and say, but we were pretty wrong for what we did to the Indians. We were pretty wrong for all the lynchings. Another issue that comes up when discussing black crime versus white crime, or specifically police crime, because that seems to be, it seems that people equate police crime with white on black. And I don't view it as such. So when people make the argument, well, that was a black police officer, he was part of that group, so you can't say it was racist. Racist is not one person behaving in a certain manner towards another person. Racism is the system that controls a certain group of people. And the police force is part of that system. You'll never hear me say that every officer is bad. I don't believe it. You have to consider, though, that when you have whatever the percentage of dirty cops is, let's call it 5 or 10%. That's being generous, I feel. But let's call it 5 to 10% of police officers who either are dirty or who are more likely to who possess a racial bias. Okay. Now, why would I even make such a claim that they would possess racial biases? Well, I prefer white women who act black. No, racial biases. Because the Department of Justice has reported that there are officers in racist organizations within the police department. Please understand, I'm not saying that there are police officers who belong to racist organizations and happen to be a police officer. I'm saying that within police departments, there are racist organizations. Not all officers, obviously not. So racism does definitely exist within the police force. But beyond that, let's say we do have this 5 to 10% of officers who have biases, who allow their emotions to get the best of them, who act on their biases. What happens with the partners who are around? What happens with the other officers who are well aware of what's going on? They know this guy. They know he doesn't like minority, black people, Hispanics, Asians. How do they know? Because they hear the talk in the locker room. They hear it around the station. They get the emails, the text messages, the racist joke. So they're aware of it. In fact, the police force is such a safe haven that they can talk about what they've done openly amongst each other. This is coming from the words of police officers, some former, some current. But it exists. This atmosphere of hate exists, and there are people who know about it, officers who know about it. My question is, if the officer who knows about it does nothing about it, are they still a good officer? Are they a moral person? I believe the quote is, the only thing necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. If I got the quote wrong, let me know. It sounds like I'm making an argument for freedom when that freedom infringes on somebody else's freedom. I don't have a problem with people owning the Confederate flag in their home. If you want to fly it on your front yard, you can do that. but the government should have no part of it. The question was asked, where does it stop? There are streets named after General Robert E. Lee. That's true. Do you change those streets? What about money? We've got huge racists. So when we are forced to look at how much freedom we allow, I think you draw the line at where it affects someone else's freedom, not necessarily just where it hurts someone's feelings. The government should be an impartial representation of the whole, of the entirety of the population. Of course, our nation is the United States of America. Everyone here is not American. At the same time, we have every right to fly our country's flag, our nation's flag. It's what represents us. I understand that. The Confederate flag does not still represent any portion of our government. Then again, I know you saw it on my face. Sure, there are some people who are still good old boys, who are still Southern gentlemen, who still hold on to those old biases from the South and will die with an iron grip on their Confederate mentalities. But again, they don't represent the whole of the country. And yes, the devil is still barbecuing cars. Good Lord. There's not a whole lot you can do to change people's minds. There will be a number of people who consider the removal of the flags further proof that we are a post-racial America. We hired a black president. Yeah. Hasn't done a whole lot to help the plight of black people. Not too anxious to condemn or to put into effect policy that changes all the police violence, is slow to actually release black people who have been wrongly incarcerated or who have been unjustly sentenced. But we're post-racial. Say hi, quiz. Yes, we know you're here. Bye. This video is all over the place. The fact that we have some black people in positions of authority does not mean we're in a post-racial America. What's the name of this Supreme Court justice who just wrote a dissent? Black justice. Can't think of his name right now. Clarence Thomas. He said the fact that people were enslaved did not remove their dignity or their humanity. Are you serious? And you're a black man? You have lost your mind. And how you could even your fingers to write the whole. Talk about betraying your history. The history of your people. There's nothing okay about that. Yes, it is possible to take a person's dignity. Whipped in front of your children. Raped in front of your wife. This country has a very poor history, but a worse memory. And the only way to get past it is to be willing to talk about it. The first step to overcoming anything is to admit you have a problem. So why won't America solve the racial divide anytime soon? Ask Mr. Bill O'Reilly. You think there's a... You don't? All right. I've been talking a long time. It's hot. We'll go play with the dogs. Like the video? Like, share, subscribe. Talk about it. Tell me what a fool I am. I can't believe this nigger talking. I got called a nigger. First time. Well, first time since on YouTube. Yeah. That must mean I've arrived. I must be doing something right. Got people already not liking me. If you disagree, put it down below. Let me know and we can talk about it. All right? Be good.